And I think a lot of us have been on this call before. I think this is Ron, the fellow with the great haircut for a pandemic is Ron Sisson.
Nice going.
Yeah, I was on a call last night with about 12 different guys, and it was funny noticing the hair, and people were using hats in a certain way. But there was about 25% of the guys went with the Ron Sisson haircut. Just an easier way to it.
I've been bald on the top for a long time, so it's just easier to just zing it all off and it's done.
Yeah, I talked about it with my wife, but it's a no-go. Anyways, it's
just
good
see
to
in the garden.
Yeah, exactly. Hi, Barry. It's good to see everyone. Today's May the 12th, and it's our another coaching coaches Zoom call. These have really been fun. I think we're almost close to, I think it's 8 or 9, so close to double digits, and we'll see how far this is going. It's looking like golf courses in Ontario are going to open. It's June 2nd. I think we need Elon Musk to be lobbying our premier. Gosh, talk about a bulldog. Anyways, we've had some great calls the last 4 weeks or so, and what I did was I focused on 4 people who largely had an expertise in one particular area that we could learn from. And people like Ralph Bauer last week. I thought it was so cool that we were able to, in live time, watch Ralph Bauer, a PGA Tour coach, analyze golf swings of some really good players such as Jeff Klein, and they could ask questions, and we could ask questions. I thought that was really cool. But today I'm going to widen our focus around what we can learn from each other, essentially, and specifically I want to take a look at, in essence, why do we coach? We're all coaches. And so I think it'd be really interesting to take a look at who's influenced us, and how have they influenced us. And my hope is that we'll get a perspective on our own impacts on our students and about what we're coaching. And such as I put it out there, have we ever considered what is it like to be coached by us? And through this process, maybe we'll come away with, are there parts of our coaching game that we could in fact improve and make ourselves better coaches? So what I'm going to invite you to do, as per every Zoom call, is that if you've got some noise going on in the background, maybe mute yourself until it's your turn to speak. Otherwise, I kind of like mics open so that people can engage. But if you got some noise going on, better to mute. And so I'm going to ask some people some questions. And what I would like you to do is just fire away if you have a question, a comment, something you want to pull out of somebody. And in fact, act as a coach for other people. I think it could really be a fun call in that regards. So as I said, I sent out an email and asked you all to consider who's the most influential coach to you, and to write down 5 things that made that coach your favorite. And what I'm going to do is ask some follow-ups. But first, I'm going to so that you can hear a different voice, for gosh sakes. I'm going to start with Mike Martz. Are you willing to be our first victim? I mean, participant, Mike?
I'm good. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So, like I said, I'm gonna ask those questions that I put on the email. Then I'm gonna have some follow-up questions, and invite you all to ask questions, comment, pull things out. So Mike, who is the most influential coach to you, and what were, say, those 5 things that made that coach your favorite?
Now, you and I, we've talked about this. And, I found it a difficult exercise, and I've sort of done this thing with community golf coach program that I do workshops for the PGA of Canada, and I've probably done this about 12 or 15 times as sort of the icebreaker for those events. So these are all coaches gathered together, or potential coaches gathered together. And I do ask that question of them, and I always wondered why it took them so long to do it. So basically what I do is I would give them 5 pieces of sticky note, and I would have them put something on each sticky note, and then we would post them on the wall and see what sort of the outcome was. So, when you and I talked a little bit about this the other day, I sat down this morning in between a couple of calls, and I tried to do it myself, and I found it a difficult exercise because of the vintage that I am. I mean, I played, high competitive hockey, baseball, and golf, obviously, but I mean, most of the stuff that I had, the coaches were either volunteers, parents. So coaching wasn't what coaching is today. So, I mean, as a result, I just sit and think about, I mean, who would be my favorite? I couldn't come up with really a favorite coach because I've been self-taught in a lot of things. So when I look at maybe teachers or mentors or those type of folk, I mean, I thought about some of the teachers I had maybe in university and high school that you connected with maybe and why that was. And I think a lot of it had to do with even the coaches I had in hockey. It wasn't technical stuff because sometimes it was just volunteers. So a lot of it was just their commitment to being there. You knew that they were probably volunteering. So it was their time commitments away from their families, their dedication to just kind of shepherding, the kids onto the ice and making sure everybody had a way to go. And the other thing too is that a lot of it, coaching today and coaching 40 years ago was different. There was a lot of tough love 40 years ago. That ride home in the car video, there was a lot of that stuff. So, but what I did look at with, some of the common threads were, a lot of the coaches I had, like even Mo, more of it was modeling than anything else. So, they modeled perseverance, dedication, focus, commitment to sport, commitment to the things they did. Yes, maybe they were technically knowledgeable and played, like even some of the coaches I had in hockey and ball, I mean, they played ball or played hockey. And so they did have some technical knowledge of it, but, other than sort of forechecking, back checking, and maybe a little bit of power play, a lot of it was experiential learning as kids. So I did find it a difficult exercise because of that. But, like I said, a lot of the things that I came up with these people were more the human factors of what they did, kind of less hierarchical, and just keeping fun in the sport and the dedication to it. And I think that was for me, but it was a hard exercise. And I wonder, and, I realized why when I put students on kind of as the icebreaker and I give them 5 minutes to do this, why a lot of them are still staring at those pages in about 3 or 4 minutes in.
All right. So briefly, because I want to try and get through everyone if we can, Mike, so it sounds to me like it's more like the life lessons that you learn from your coaches than anything else. How do you bring that into your coaching now?
Well, I think, it's the same thing. I think you just have to say, like, a lot of times I think a lot of coaches today are trying to be too content rich and they don't work enough in the context. So I think it's creating that love of sport, not making it like work, trying to create practices that aren't like work, and the kids don't feel like the last thing they want to do is come to practice. They just want to go play. So it's trying to keep the ability to play, the ability for them to love it, show us as much enthusiasm and energy levels that you expect from them. Be prepared, those things, just the life skills, and again, not working on, I'm telling you what to do, but we're going to sit down and kind of decide between us what we want to do and why it's beneficial and why we're going to work on those things.
Cool. All right. And folks, so I record all these calls, and I really think today is going to be a lot of amazing stuff for sharing from each other, but also to hear back what we also talk about, because we're going to be giving up some stuff that we might even surprise us. So I'd invite you to go to my YouTube channel and review it, because I think, of all these things today, I think today is really going to be valuable in terms of what we learn about ourselves and from each other. So, Mike, I just want to ask you now, given what you've talked about, what would make you a better coach?
What would make me a better coach after reflecting?
Yeah.
Well, I think reflecting is always scary, isn't it? Because you reflect and you think, well, am I actually doing this, or am I a byproduct of my environment and my age? So I think sometimes I have to, I try to, like everything you look at in sport is you have to look at tendency and then figure out if you want to stop that tendency or if you want it to continue. And and sometimes I have to look at myself when, maybe I look at one of the juniors I work with and they don't appear to be really doing much week to week. And it's like, well, should I really get tough on them and give them sort of some parameters of things that need to be done, or do you cut them some slack? So I find it difficult at times, just kind of looking at myself. It's like that email you type out and then you maybe should wait and sleep overnight before you send it at times. That, I look at that and say, okay, all right. I mean, is this what I should be doing, or should I be a little softer? So I think at times for me, I have to look at, not being as demanding maybe as I can be at times, and just sort of looking at, wait a minute, I don't want to be that person.
Yeah, right. Hey, Mike, thanks so much for being the first off to start it. Took some guts to do that, but you and I had already talked about it. So thanks very much. And again, I invite anybody, if you've got a comment or a question for Mike or anybody, just to fire away. So I'm just going to shut up for a sec here and see if anyone's got something for Mike. If not, we can move along. Go ahead, Ron.
Yeah, this is my first time on one of these calls, so I'm just getting my bearings. So I'm presuming that everyone here is in the golf field, or are there different coaches from different aspects?
This group here, particularly golfers.
Okay, all right. Yeah, that's just, you were talking, Mike, about your background in various sports that you grew up with. So I just wanted to clarify where we're all at.
Cool. All right. Okay. Jeff Klein, would you be willing to go next?
No problem at all, Tim. What's going to be interesting is there's a couple guys on this call who probably had similar experiences to me. I know Brandon and George there, and John, I think, is there also.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up an athlete and did various things to a collegiate level. And then I was introduced to a different way of learning in 1999. And that was with Fred Shoemaker. And I literally drove out of the facility that we were learning at. It was a 3-day school. And I drove out and I had to stop my car and pull over and just say, what the hell just happened? That's how, for me, how dramatic this way of learning was. And I had never experienced it before. And fast forward over 20 years later, and a pretty close relationship with him, where I can digest and condense the bottom line is that he taught me how to learn a motor skill. And as I said, I did various sports growing up, but it was the first time that awareness versus words really came into play for me. And that first 8 hours, that first day was so dramatic that I could not wait to get back for the second and third day. And I continue with it 20 years later. So he taught me how to learn. I wrote down some notes. And what specifically is that? And when I'm working with my students, I have yet to come across an individual who, when we're working on whatever the particular is, whatever the content is, I have yet to come across anybody who doesn't bail out when they start hitting poor shots. And if there's any secret, I feel like in the past 3 or 4 years, I've learned 2 secrets. And the number one secret is that time when they bail out was the missed opportunity. It was the time that physiologically things were changing, but ego and judgment came into play, which is an innate response. And it was my job as the coach prior to when that occurred, because I knew it was coming, to enroll them in such a way where they knew it was coming and they stuck with it. And to this day, I have never met anybody who doesn't bail out. So my task is to, okay, let's move on from there. So that was, in my opinion, a key secret to effective coaching. As these guys are well aware, they set up, Extraordinary Golf sets up an environment that there is no judgment. That is a big benefit. They recognize you as an individual. They can tune in very, very well to how you operate. As you advance in it, and as we advance with our students, I found it very critical to stretch the student a little bit. Are they willing to take some chances, regardless of the performance, at least initially? And he has always done that with me. He always starts out with, are you willing to take chances today? We all want to look good and hit the ball well, et cetera, et cetera. But it was the chances that, he pushes me to take that elevated my game. And it's a skill as a coach, in my opinion, to be able to create that environment that they're willing to take the chances, that they're being empowered the entire time, even when the performance is less than optimal. And I share with you this. This is well after 99 when I first met these guys. I went up to Long Island to meet with Mike Hebron. And Mike is a well-known guy in the industry, and I didn't know too much about him. So he doesn't know me from Adam, and he says to me right away that he now realizes that he spent the first 25 years of his coaching career and he didn't help anybody. Now, those of you who maybe follow him these days, he's had an epiphany on how the mind works and how we develop. But I give him all the props in the world because he didn't know me at all. He then takes me into a classroom after hitting a few balls and gives me a written exam on what it would take to get to the next level. And I hadn't told him that I was with Fred prior to that. And I did well on this written exam, and it was because of my work with Shoemaker. And he was a little bit surprised it was a multiple choice test. He was a little bit surprised as to my answers because it's not the typical answer. And the typical student doesn't go there to develop. They don't go to creativity and curiosity and freedom and things like that a few of the guys on the call are aware of. So, when you asked the question, I had no hesitation whatsoever that he is my most influential. And I'll just finish with this. I recently, past 2.5 seasons, started with Greg McHatton. Some of you know who Greg McHatton is. And I was down in Florida, and I ran into Martin Hall. We talked for a little bit. He asked me what I'm doing. And he said to me that I am learning from the best instructor in North America that nobody's ever heard of. And I found that a very interesting comment because the second secret that I've learned, which was from Greg, was how the actual instrument, the golf club, how it's actually built to do everything that we want it to do. And I had no idea that that was the case. After playing since the late 80s, I had no idea. And we went through some very funky exercises on how to become more aware of that. And it took me 2 full weeks to be able to do some of these things. But I share that with everybody because it was that dramatic and brought my game to another level too. And I share that with my students, and I have yet to meet anybody who's able to do these exercises right off the bat. So that's my input.
Cool. That's really cool. So I've been asking some follow-up questions. You've hit on, you've already answered them already. How do you bring these into your current coaching? So I'll just go straight to this because there's a bunch of people we need to get through here. But Jeff, what would make you a better coach?
Being less dogmatic. I find when I hook on to something, I hook on. And I think I need to learn to shut up a little bit more You know, the other thing that Fred taught me is, you know, the language of a motor skill is not words, it's actually awareness. So the more words, the less development. So I would say, for me, less dogmatic and less words.
Cool. All right. Again, and if anyone has a question or comment for Jeff, fire away. But I just want to thank you, everybody. Thank you for your candor, Jeff. I mean, it takes some balls, if you will, to be able to talk about those things in an open forum with people where you need to improve on. Not everyone takes up that invitation, so I just want to commend you on that. Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
Got it.
Barry, would you be willing to go?
Sure.
Oh, great. Thanks.
I grew up in a small town, St. Andrews, New Brunswick, and I was the only female junior golfer. So I learned how to play with the guys, and I had a coach, and Clayton Van Tassel, who is still alive today. He's up there in age, and gave me the love for the game. And he was not technical at all. He made sure we had fun, and the fundamentals were the base, and that's how we went on. So I owe a lot to Mr. Van Tassel, that's for sure. And then when I went off to school, I actually had a lesson from my first female pro, Maxine Van Evra, actually. And I have very small hands. A junior large glove is too big for my hand. And she was the first one to teach me the 10-finger grip, which a lot of people don't think it's a grip, but for me, that was a game changer, to be honest with you. And I do use it with juniors and ladies that have small hands, because it just, how when you change your grip, it doesn't feel right. It absolutely felt perfect the first time I did it. So, just little things like that. And I was able to work with Don Witt around the short game a little bit, and had a bunker lesson from Mo many years ago. So I enjoy watching other instructors. I've been away from teaching for the last 7 years on overall. I worked for a golf association, so, did a lot of junior stuff. And so what I'm lacking now is a lot of the technology, but I'm still a proponent of, I teach a lot of women now, again, and a lot of juniors. And I don't know how technical, if they need a TrackMan on every shot, because I like to teach and actually be looking at my student and talking to my student and giving that feedback. I'm actually very energetic and very enthusiastic when I teach, and I really like to connect with the student that way. But my lacking part is the technology, which I'm starting to learn, and looking forward to continue learning that.
Yeah. So Barry, sounds like you're trying to strike a balance between life skills that you're coaching, but also the technology part. But what do you think your impact is on your students?
You hate to pat yourself on the back, but
go for it. Again, a complete invitation. Go for it.
People just really, I'm a people person, and they like my enthusiasm, and I'm so positive with them. And I've been told by many people I make it simple. And I think that's an art, is being able to converse with the person and make it simple. Sometimes you can start getting a little too technical and you lose them. And I believe I'm not teaching a lot of elite people now. So, I'm going back to some grassroots, and I want to keep it simple and let them have fun, because, kids are leaving the game, and women are leaving the game, and men. And golf is supposed to be recreational and fun, so I try to make it that way.
Awesome. So I'm asking everyone, what would make you a better coach, Barry?
Talk less. After every time they hit a ball, I want to say something and reassure them it's okay, and I've got to learn to step back and just let them work through it a little bit. And that's tough for me, I won't lie. And again, just when people want Actually, I've just signed on with Callaway, and I've been going through the Callaway University stuff, and you know, it's good information to have, but you have to know when to give that information. So that's I just have to step back sometimes.
All right. Well, I think there's a theme there for a lot of us. We feel inclined to dive in, and we're so passionate. But I think, as Jeff was saying, there's a good sense of when to just allow them to talk and kind of pull on their own stuff that they have, pull on their own gold, if you will. John Poole, would you be willing to go next? Thank you, Barry.
Yep.
Sure, Tim. The coach that had the most influence on me was Fred Shoemaker. And I was introduced to him through George McNamara, who had spent some time with him before I got introduced to him. And that was at a 3-day golf school for coaches out in Palm Springs. And it was just an amazing experience for me because, and the reason, one of the main reasons was that in my career as a club professional and attending a lot of PGA summits and seminars and teaching this and teaching that, and I felt a little empty as I came back from those summits. And over the years, I developed a lot of questions about what I was doing and how I was doing it relative to the culture that I was a part of. And so many of those questions were answered in those 3 days. So it really excited me tremendously to go forward for no other reason than just to try to make a difference in myself and other people. Some of the things that happened there, first of all, to realize the importance of being different as an individual, having a different outlook on things in order to achieve stuff or to make a difference, and was a real game changer, and something, when you're involved in a culture for 40 years or so, it becomes ingrained in you, and it's a little different to make those changes. Certainly, creating an environment for learning. That was a way, an opening, and I've continued. It's been 10 years now. I've continued to try to refine that thing, is to create the environment for learning. And there's so many things, and the lack of a hierarchical relationship being one of them, empowering the student being another, and allowing them to go, and learning the importance of true listening, which is different than just keeping your ears open. It's actually having a mindset to listen to the words and accept them as their truth, even though it may not be my truth at the time, but to accept them as their truth. The ongoing modeling that I go through, or that I absorb when I've gone to these seminars, or I've seen Fred has come to the section several times, and I've spent days with him, a day here and a day there and a day here and there. And just the importance of sort of feeling like you're climbing a mountain that has no top, continuing to learn all the time, which was so impressive. The model that I've taken from Fred, as well as and you take all of this, all the learning about learning, and all of the environment, and all of the empowerment of the student, and keeping my mouth shut, and certainly the awareness of how judgments, even a judgment that is positive, can be limiting to learning, and then being able to allow these things to have an influence on my personal life and my relationships with other people, my family and friends, has been certainly something that I have appreciated through the whole experience.
Wow, that's awesome stuff, John. Thanks so much, man. I just like with each one of you who speaks, I just think this is getting richer and richer. This is awesome stuff. One of the reasons why I was called to pose these questions to you is that I'm coaching the coaches at the University of Guelph, and what I love about what you just said, John, is that so much of what we learn transcends golf. We can take it into our family life, into our community, into our businesses, and because if it's all about just the number on the scorecard, well, that to me, that's just too close-minded, if you will. So I love what you're saying there. I just want to ask you real quick. I wonder if you had, and you continue to have, kind of this almost reaction like Jeff had, like he'd never had a, like, wow, he just had cymbals clanged on his ears about this golf culture and what you learned from Fred, and how do you deal with that on an ongoing basis? You might have some people going, here, cure my slice, give me a tip. I want to beat my brother-in-law this afternoon. Like, how do you square this?
Absolutely. One of the difficult things is certainly that, because the person that a lot of the people that I'm giving a lesson to, or that ask that question, and I answer that in a way that they almost don't want to hear that. They want to hear what's easy. They want to hear a tip, and they want to hear a fix, because that's the culture that they've come from, the magazines or lessons that they've taken, or the word fix that's out there. So when I talk about being present to what really happens out there, and how to handle a breakdown on the golf course, and they can relate to themselves breaking down, but they're looking for a mechanical fix, and they're looking for more technology in this world we live in. So it's tough when they're on the first tee or going to the first tee, and it's not tough, but they're looking for a move, and I'm just trying to get them into a freer way of thinking. So in that situation, I just say, free it up and let it go, because if they get thinking out there, about their swing and their moves and everything, rather than just letting it go. It's tough to break through at times the culture that they've been raised in.
So given that, and I invite you to keep this to 30 seconds if you can.
Sure.
Given that, what would make you a better coach?
Okay, my keeping aware of my ability to listen and empower. And if I can keep those things going for me, I will become better, even though some people feel that the more I talk, the more they're going to learn.
Awesome. Thanks so much. All right. Again, thank you so much for your candor. There's a lot of gold in here. I'm loving this. So I want to try and make sure we get through everyone. So just as we go along, folks, just be aware of, let's leave some space for some other people. Like I've heard it said in a buffet line, when you take a couple pieces of bacon, be aware, is there enough left for the guy behind? So I don't know. It just came to me. I do a lot of men's work. There you go. Ron, would you be willing? Ron Sisson.
Sure. I would have to say that in terms of a coach, my mentor was a fellow by the name of Vance Allred at an indoor golf school I worked at in Calgary, who basically kind of changed my whole mindset about how hitting a golf ball really works. If I could just do a quick survey of everybody here. How old were you when you first picked up a golf club and started learning? I was 10. So just put your hands up to give me a number sign if you need more. So Barry was 8. You were 7, 10.
I was 13.
13, right? So basically all of us, we started swinging a golf club when we were small. And we were still in the stage of motor skill learning that Dr. Gabrielle Wolf talks about, where we don't learn because somebody told us how to figure out how to crawl or walk, or, you know, figure out how to get our hand to our mouth, put a spoon in our mouth. All of those things were learned instinctively and naturally. So Vance helped me understand that golf is basically a hand-eye coordination skill sport, and you need to develop that skill. Because of our age when we started, we all developed that skill very naturally and very easily. Over time, as we get older, we hear the coaching that says, if you look exactly like Ernie Els or Tiger Woods or whoever's body moves in such and such a way, that's what you got to get your students to do. And of course, that just confuses them because it takes them out of their awareness of themselves and how they would naturally do it and tries to put them into some sort of a model. So he was probably my most influential coach from how to get people across the skill set of hitting a golf ball. I think what people fail to understand about golf is the incredible difficulty of it, because I'm not sure, as some of you may or may not be aware of the science and physics behind what has to happen when you hit a golf ball, you know, 250 yards relatively straight. But basically, in as briefly as I can, the club starts at address. When it goes up around behind you and back around to the finish, it travels about 35, 40 feet. From the transition down to impact, it's accelerating 3 to 5 times faster than a top field dragster. The club head moves in a curve, not a straight line. The face is rotating from 90 degrees at waist high to 90 degrees, or pardon me, 90 degrees open halfway to impact, 90 degrees closed halfway after impact, a full 180 degrees of rotation. And at impact, if you're going to hit it straight, it's got to be within a single degree of square on either side of square, right? And also at impact, you have to hit within a 16th of an inch of the center, because as good players, you all know that when you hit a quarter of an inch off, your shot's foolish, right?
So Ron, what's the key piece there from that data you're giving us?
So the key piece of all of that is basically this: when someone sculls it, the ball screams across the ground and they get all mad at themselves. That's basically 3/4 of an inch. So then they blame that their head lifted 3/4 of an inch.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the problem at all. And then they look for technical fixes. Now, one of my other key mentors was Fred Shoemaker. As I was coaching over the years, I began to understand how important it was that people could learn to stop a moment after they hit a shot and then evaluate and process, okay, so what possibly could I have done there that made that shot work or not work, right? So as I read Fred's book, he asked the question, why do you golf? And when you ask people that question, they almost never talk about score or beating people or competition. It's usually fresh air exercise, socializing with my buddies, all those kinds of things. They almost never talk about score. But what's the first thing that people do when they go to the golf course? They go to the pro shop and they grab a what? A scorecard. And then they start adding up the numbers, and then they judge themselves based on those numbers. So as I began to understand Fred's concept of helping students become aware, I would be with a student, they would hit a shot, and they'd hit it beautifully, and they'd stand there and they'd admire it. And I'd ask them, okay, well, what happened on that shot? And say, well, I did everything right, it worked perfectly. Then the next shot, they shank it sideways, and then what would happen is they would immediately rake up another ball. I say, wait a minute, what happened to awareness? What happened on that shot? Why? I couldn't understand why they couldn't stop and just evaluate the shot without judgment.
So how do you get them to do that?
I help them understand the concept that there are no embarrassed babies. Has any of you ever seen an embarrassed baby? Well, there are none, because babies have not hung around with the adults long enough to understand that there is such a concept as embarrassment. So everything that we think we understand about life, whether it's religion, politics, cultural values, et cetera, it's not our own. It's not what we decided. It's what our culture taught us.
Right.
And the basic culture in most of the world is I always tell my students that when you were a little kid between the ages of 2 and 5, life was simple. Play, learning, joy, creativity, discovery, imagination, and all these other little people around me, they're my friends. They're people I can play with. As we get older and older and we watch these lovely glowing screens, the screen tells us, no. Life is endless comparison and competition with other people. And your worth is completely based upon how you rate, whether you're smart, funny, rich, et cetera, all the comparison criteria. Now in golf, the comparison criteria is good shots and bad shots. And you're a winner golfer if you hit lots of good shots, and you're a loser and you suck if you hit bad shots, right? Because our culture is obsessed with people who have athletic coordination. They get paid millions of dollars. And if you have no athletic coordination, you're called klutz spaz loser. So then basically, I gradually came to understand that the reason why those people would hit a shot, glance it off the toe, just miss my leg, I'm standing there non-judgmentally going, that's the best swing I've ever seen you make. Too bad you struck inaccurately and swung the club too close to you and hit it on the toe. What was that swing like? Oh, my swing was terrible.
All right. So Ron, just so thank you. So I'm going to ask you in 15 seconds because we got 50 minutes left, 3 to go.
Yep.
So in 15 seconds, what would make you a better coach?
Basically understanding that you just have to understand that you don't know everything. There's an endless learning process. And I've been doing this for 30 plus years. And I think the key for me is to get across to people that they need to not judge themselves based on a golf ball responding to natural law, because it just responds to the physics of how you hit it, the aerodynamics of its flight, gravity sticking it back on the ground. Adding words like good shot, bad shot, judgment, etc., is what leads people to that cultural judgment, which prevents them from learning.
All right. Hey, thanks, man. Thanks a lot. And great to have you on this call. Dave or Brandon, which of you would like to go? And we've got to keep you to 5 minutes if possible. See, that's the thing with this screen thing. You don't know, are they having a sandwich or? Oh,
hi,
Brandon, go for it.
Tim.
Hey.
This is Dave. Thank you. And I'm on my way to work. I'm in the car, and I'm dividing my attention here. The traffic is not bad at all. So anyway, I apologize for not reading the notes beforehand, and I didn't until I logged on to the call that I see that there were some questions you wanted answered. And so I'm kind of, and listening to everyone, I'm dividing my attention again. But anyway, I will say now the biggest influence on me as a coach or a player or
as a coach.
As a coach, okay. Well, without a doubt, these days, right now, after these 5 years of working for George McNamara, has been the influence of Fred Shoemaker in how I help people. That's my foundation. But I really love the thought of golf and use that also. Big influences have been people like Chuck Hogan. And I will also say that the Henry Griffiths Golf Company, I know they're making a comeback now, but back in their heyday, what they helped me with in getting in balance in my own personal golf swing and in helping people seeing that can make a difference was big for me. And so those are my chief influences.
Okay. And so what is it like to be coached by you, Dave?
Well, it's evolved, of course, and I think it's a friendlier environment. It's, of course, non-judgmental, and I always enjoyed lessons. And at some point, once I got to be somewhat confident, I tried to have a little fun with lessons, but much more so now. There's no question I feel much more at ease in lessons, and that's actually what hooked me on pursuing extraordinary golf. Is after working with George for about a month in the pro shop, he didn't need an instructor. He just needed somebody for the pro shop. we at some point, golf pros didn't take too long to start talking about the golf swing, and he said, "I don't have any frustrating lessons anymore." And I was like, well, "Okay, now you hooked me." Boy, that was a big hook right there. And so that's when we started really talking about extraordinary golf, and I certainly embraced it wholeheartedly. And it's my biggest influence. Now, I still am getting better. I don't want to be a hypocrite and ask people to do something I'm not either trying to do or I'm trying to get better at it myself. I still have not exposed why I yip, and so I putt left-handed now, and I don't yip anymore. So I don't question it, and I don't know if I'll ever go back to putting right-handed. In fact, it may even be getting the worst ever of my putting. Trying to putt right-handed the few times I try it. So, and so I don't know what that says about me. I just haven't experienced it.
I love your vulnerability. You know, that's great. And I'm sure that talking with your students about your experience with the yips, it empowers them. They go, "Oh, he gets it." You know, that's great. So quickly, Dave, what would make you a better coach? About 15 seconds or so.
Sure. Just speaking less mechanics. I do enjoy the mechanics still, but I would say just zipping up your mouth.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Dave. So I'm going to go to George just because he's sitting there and he is coming in and out. So we'll go George, and then we'll go with Brandon to finish with a bang.
Yeah. Well, I started my journey back in the 80s. I was working at a Jewish club and giving a bunch of lessons. And I just looked at it one day and said, you know, I don't see anybody getting any better. I tried as hard as I could. I was trained by the PGA, trained by a lot of really good teachers. So I kind of went on a journey to get better. I've went to a lot of different people and listened to a lot of different things. I would say Manuel de la Toro is one that I was really attracted to. Didn't quite know how to do what he was doing. I tried it for a while. It didn't really work. I think it was good stuff, though. I was attracted to that type, sort of a teaching that was free and feeling the club head. But when push come to shove and I tried to teach it, I really wasn't very successful with it. Not because of him, but more because of me. I met Fred Shoemaker in 2004 at a teaching summit. I just spent about a year and a half with Hank Haney. And I was ready. What Fred said was different. I think I told you, Tim, the first 3 days I spent in Palm Springs was the most difficult 3 days of my life. Everything I learned to do was interrupted, and it was very uncomfortable. I couldn't sleep, and I didn't like it in the beginning. I don't know how in the world I was ever going to be able to do it. But I went back to my club, and I started fiddling around a little bit, and I wasn't very good at it. But I got better. I still go back to see Fred. This is, I think, 15 or 16 years. What I got from Fred was something I never got from anybody as a teacher. I became a coach. Fred showed me how to enroll people into a lesson, to empower them. He showed me how to check my ego. You know, we all have egos when we teach. Fred is a person that has no ego. I mean, I just don't. I never met a man with no ego, and that would be Fred. Obviously, I was trained in awareness and presence, how to create an environment that was safe. I could train people. We've talked to people about dealing with the voice in their head, how to deal with that on a daily basis. Failure, how do you deal with failure? I mean, failure is mandatory in the learning process. And I guess maybe the most important thing is if you're not coaching point of view, someone's view of the world as they see it, you're probably not a very good coach. So in every lesson, we need to talk about their point of view, how they see things. And so for me, it's a work in progress. And I know I'm getting, I don't want to make it have a judgment, but I'm getting better every year at it. And I've really enjoyed the process of it. The process of it's been really cool for me. Coming out of a lesson, if someone can get life lessons from it, and I know they do, that's just a kick for me. It's not just about hitting a golf ball, but it's about our awareness, about our daily lives. I think it's a really cool thing. And I'm more excited I'm 71 years old. I'm more excited about coaching now than I've ever been. And I want to continue to get better at it. I don't profess to know it all, but it's a fun process.
Oh, thank you very much, George. So I'm going to ask you just one question.
Yes.
And we've had interesting discussions over the years that we've gotten to know each other. And one is that you told me that you don't go into a lesson with any kind of plan for this student or that they should work on something, which is different than a lot of coaches, particularly if they have a long-term relationship. What is your point of view when you go into a lesson with a student are you trying to make sure they leave having cured whatever's going on, or what are you trying to do with that student?
Well, first of all, to go into a lesson with nothing is scary. Without trying to run your stuff on somebody is a scary thing. My objective is to find out what the person wants and go there. So since most people want different things, it's kind of exciting. You don't know where you're going to go with it. You need to empower the student. You need to let the student tell you where they want to go. And if you're a good coach, you help them go there. You help them discover what they want. So in that context, it's just a fun way of coaching. If I go in and try to coach everybody the same way and with the same thing, if you give a lot of lessons, it just gets boring. But in the context of empowering someone and finding out what they want, going down to them, what do you want, and helping them get it, man, that's really a cool process. It really is.
Yeah, I could see how you would find that fulfilling, that you would learn as they learn. That's really cool.
I think going out a lesson, if I can learn as much as them, I mean, it's fun. I can learn from them. They can learn from me. And it just creates an environment that's just safe and fun. And I just find that people can thrive under that environment.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you, George. Brandon. Go, dude.
Yes. I apologize if I'm cutting in and out. Let me know. I'm not certain if my
You're good
Wi-Fi
for now.
is.
You're good for now.
Okay, great. Well, I'm gonna sound like a broken record with everybody on the Fred Shoemaker thing, but I'll start with a coach that I had early in my life that showed me a lot about how not to be with at least me. And I watched him with other teammates as well. And it just showed me how the paradigm that he was living in, and it was pretty common in other coaches, he was just more extreme at it. He had a certain way of seeing things and then imposed it on you. And it created a lot of conflict and resentment. And it was the opposite of what Fred Shoemaker has established as a non-judgmental environment where he sees the brilliance within the student and draws it out. And of course, when that book was handed to me as a teenager and I started reading it, it resonated with me quickly, and I could see the paradigm that I was living in and could put my finger on it. Now I had words to kind of go along with what I was experiencing. And then it, led me down a completely different path. So, yeah.
All right. So what is it like to be coached by you, Brandon?
Well, my intention is always for it to be the right amount of challenging so that it starts to grow their awareness in a way where they see where they're at, they've experienced what's going on, and they can see a path forward towards whatever it is that they're looking to achieve. And knows more.
So that's your intention. Great. So how do you think successful are you at meeting your intention with your students?
Most of the time, I would say I always ask for feedback. So whether or not I get it all the time, I don't know. But I haven't had anybody come to me, especially after being coached with Fred for all these years and coaching for him, that came up to me and if we didn't catch it not working early on so that we could change course, which that happens quite a bit actually, then but by the end of it, things are complete in a way where everybody is excited about where it's headed.
Great. And okay, briefly, what would make you a better coach?
Shit, it's frozen.
No. Okay, what would make you a better coach? Did you hear that? Still froze, I guess. You know what? I'm going to go in real quick, and I'll come back to Brandon. So I could have said Fred Shoemaker, but the person who's most influential coach to me is a woman named Mary Davis, who coached me in my coaching and business development for about 3 years. And the key thing for her was she was the best listener I ever heard. She would fully hear me. She would pull me out. She would hold a mirror up to me. And it was like a coaching session, almost like a check-in, as if one was doing in a support group, and therapy all at once. And I always felt energized and that I'd emptied my cup when I left with Mary. And one of the things she did really well was hold me accountable. We would hit on things that I would do over the next week, and she would hold me accountable. And it would be like, hey, how'd you do? And what was the learning I would take from that? So that was a key. And what could I do as a better coach? I think, like we've all heard, I think sometimes I like to hear myself talk. And if I could just listen more, like be a good caddy, keep my mouth shut and my ears and eyes open. So that would make me a better coach. So Brandon, if you can hear me, what would make you a better coach?
My experience with myself is my theme is often thinking I'm right all the time, and I have to kind of check that at the door. I've gotten way better at it than I was when I first started, but there's this I'm right and I know it kind of attitude that I have to make sure it doesn't have a place for it on the lesson team. So.
All right. Again, so Brandon, thank you for your candor and be able to speak truthfully what's going on. And thank you all of you. You all participated. You all were willing to talk about what's going on for you. Some of it not that comfortable, some of it, but all of it was really rich. And wow, what an amazing experience to listen to you. What a collective group we had here of wisdom and experience. And yeah, it's kind of no surprise to me that the majority of us all sort of drink from the Fred Shoemaker cup. So it's very, very cool. So again, thanks for joining us on this call. Again, I've recorded it. I'm going to post it to my YouTube channel. So you could, I think there's a lot of amazing stuff that you could go through and mine from this, and including hearing your own experience. I think that's really valuable. Sometimes to hear what you say and your own experience, and you may kind of have some insights into your own behaviors and things. So again, thanks so much. Keep safe, everyone. Keep learning, and just be well. And we'll see you next week.
Tim, this was great. Thank you. This was really great. I had tremendous appreciation for it.
Oh, thanks so much. It was really fun. Really fun.
Thanks, Tim.
All right. Cheers.
Thanks, Tim.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye, Tim.
Thanks, Tim.